It's ridiculous. I've been here since 5:30 and I'm late getting started. Okay, so we're talking about gossip. And we've made some headway on this lesson. I don't have any more books to hand out. If you do have a book, this is lesson 9, which starts on page 69. We'll just kind of review quickly definition and points we've gone over, and then get into the rest of the lesson. And before we get started, Chris, would you just ask the Lord to help us?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this another day to be part of your creation, enjoy the things and many blessings that you give us, Lord. We want to take this opportunity to thank you for each and every brother and sister we have here tonight as they continue to strive to put you first in our lives, Lord. I ask that you open our hearts to your word tonight as John brings the word. I ask that you give him a ready remembrance of what he's prepared. And most of all, that you act on each one of us individually and open our hearts to your word, that we can apply it and be better Christians and be better for you, Lord. It's in your Son, Jesus Christ's name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. So this series is entitled Overcoming Sin. And so we've been pinpointing various sins, what the fallout is from these various sins, and then some practical information and techniques for overcoming that sin. So gossip is, as we said, it's a person who spreads rumors or idle, fruitless tales. It's a lot of talk that doesn't need to be said, and as was pointed out last week, it's not just benign. It doesn't just fall out there and do nothing. It has real harmful consequences. And the word, it's translated tattlers here in the King James, but the word means, it comes from this base word fluo, which means to bubble. And so it just means one who bubbles forth. And it has to do with talking a lot and talking about things that ought not to be passed along. And Thayers even goes on to talk about the nature of a bubble, that it's hollow and useless, and why that's so appropriate when it comes to this word gossip. So the first thing that we looked at is the fallout, that the harm that's caused by this is that it reveals secrets. We looked at a couple passages here, Proverbs 11 and verse 13, for example, where the wise man says, "A talebearer reveals secret, but he who is of a faithful spirit conceals a matter." So the talebearer is unfaithful. He's untrustworthy. He shows himself to be one that you do not want to share these things with for fear of it being passed along, and passed along in a negative way. There's some other passages that kind of go along with this. Proverbs 20 and verse 19, he says, "He who goes about as a talebearer reveals secrets, therefore do not associate with one who flatters with his lips." He goes about. That was one of the things we talked about last week. Was this is not where you unintentionally mention something during a conversation that the person, it turns out the person didn't want you to. That's not what we're talking about. This is intentional. This person goes about with the intention of revealing this because they're going to get something from it. Perhaps it's, enjoyment from watching what it does to this person, having this information revealed about them. Maybe they get some enjoyment out of that. Or they want to see how they're going to react, that type of thing. Paul talked about with the widows, how to treat them. And when it came to the younger widows, he said they were not supposed to be ones who were taken into the number to be supported by the church. He says when they've begun to grow wanton against Christ, they desire to marry, having condemnation because they've cast off their first faith. And then verse 13, besides they learn to be idle, wandering about from house to house, and not only idle, but also gossips and busybodies, saying things which they ought not. So this is the nature of gossip, saying things which they ought not. And busybodies, gathering information here, telling it over here, and with the intention of getting a reaction. There's some enjoyment that comes from that. And so we talked about the fact that this is something that is done on purpose, and what's wrong with it? It violates this trust. Nobody wants to know that this thing that I've talked to you about, because we have this intimate friend relationship, that I have to worry about if you're going to pass it on. I said this in confidence. And it's not about, doing things that you shouldn't and trying to keep it on the sly. This is about, discussing matters and trying to come to a solution, even in doing what the Lord wants for you. Thoughts about this? Okay. The next thing that we're talking about is that it kindles strife. Here's some other words for talebearer: telltale, tattler, tattletale, tale-teller, gossip, blabbermouth, scandalmonger, gossiper, gossipmonger. You get the idea. And so it causes trouble. It stirs up strife by its very nature. And God has a very specific attitude about someone who's in the business of stirring up strife. He's revealed plenty on that. In Proverbs 26 and verse 20, the wise man tells us here, where there is no wood, the fire goes out. Why is that appropriate for a study of gossip?
It's never told, you never have any strife.
Okay. Number one, if it's never told, there's no fuel for strife. What's the other half of that equation? Let's say it is told. If you don't listen, if you don't receive it, there won't be fuel for strife, will there?
You don't pass it on.
That's right. You don't take it in and you pass it on. And remember this, I can keep a secret, but the people I tell can't keep a secret. That doesn't work. So it's told in confidence. It's supposed to stay in confidence. Yes.
I want to get ahead of it. It's already been mentioned once or twice, I think, about whether it's true or not. That's covered up in that. I like how he ends each lesson with application, how to overcome this particular thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes a thing may be true, but it may be something that a person is ashamed of, and to tell it would be hurtful to them and harmful to
Absolutely.
others. So, and while you ask first question, you ask, is it true? It may be true, it still may not be the best to tell it.
That's exactly right. And, as I mentioned, for example, I might come to you about a problem that I'm having spiritually because I'm trying to work through it and come to a solution. And that's true. I really do have this problem. But I don't want you to go spread that around. I'm trying to take care of this between me and you. It reminds me very much, we had a little class before this class tonight, and we were talking about Matthew 18, about how if someone sins against you. And there Jesus keeps it as small as it can be. It can just be between me and you, and nobody else ever knows about it. It only gets bigger if one of you is obstinate, and won't straighten it out. And I think it's the same way. And Dick makes an excellent point. I've had lots of people tell me it's not gossip because it's true. We talked last time about motive. It doesn't matter if it's true or false if your motive is to spread things that would be embarrassing and get a reaction and that kind of thing. Doesn't matter if it's true. It can still be gossip. Other thoughts about that? Okay, Proverbs 6, verse 16 beginning. Proverbs 6 and verse 16. These 6 things the Lord hates, yes, 7 are abomination. We've got proud look, lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren. What is discord?
Contention.
Contention is a good synonym for that. Someone else?
Discord is kind of a musical term, right? Dissonance. You ever play 2 keys right next to each other on the piano? So they're not getting along.
Yes. That's a great illustration. I mean, C, E, G sounds pretty good together, but C and D at the same time, not so much. And so there is discord. They're not working well together, and there's now strife. And this is one of the things that is mentioned that the Lord hates and is abomination. You know, I've always been struck by the literal definition of abomination. It literally means to make to stink. You remember when Abraham talked about this. Abomination is used in various ways throughout the Bible, and that's the word that's used here. The Lord hates it. It is abomination, and one who sows discord. Notice, you know, the talebearer goes about. One who sows discord, like you would sow seed for a garden. This is the one that is stirring things up. You ever known someone that was known for stirring things up, stirring the pot? This is what happens here, and God has a very definite attitude toward it. I like the way our author puts it here. Christians are supposed to be peacemakers, not troublemakers. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 9 in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God." Well, a person who's involved in gossip, sowing discord, and stirring things up, does that sound like a peacemaker? That's a strife maker, a troublemaker. And those are not the ones that are called the sons of God. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 14. Pursue peace with all people and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. So Paul wants us to, or pardon me, the Hebrew writer here wants us to make sure that we understand, if you're one that stirs up strife here on earth, don't expect to be in heaven with the Lord when this life is over. No one will see the Lord who's not pursuing peace with people and holiness. I mentioned in the devotion this morning, well, it'll be tomorrow morning now, I guess, but how when I first started preaching, it was easy for me to lose sight of the goal. When I thought that I had the truth and I was talking to someone who didn't, it became easy to get interested in winning the argument. Well, what good will it do if I win the argument by talking down and condescendingly to this person until I just thrash them with my argument? If they think that was my intent, you just wanted to do that? You don't care about my soul? You're not trying to win me to the Lord? You just want to win this argument? It doesn't do any good. Pursuing peace and holiness, we have to change our attitudes about debate and talk like that. Thoughts about that? Jim.
Ephesians chapter 4, verses 29 through 31. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers, and grieve not the Holy Spirit of God, whereby ye are sealed unto the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice.
Gossip violates that principle. Excellent. Lee?
Might not think of it this it was definitely in his intentions to be right the opposite of some of the things that you just read. He planned to do it privately. He didn't want her to spray it, he didn't want her to be gossip, even though it would be true that she was pregnant.
Yeah.
But to me, he's a very, very good example to not be a gossip.
I think that is an awesome example. Did you all hear Lee? It's also very appropriate, but he used Joseph and Mary. You know, here they were betrothed to one another, and she became pregnant. Well, the obvious implication is she's been committing fornication. And so he decided he was going to put her away privately. Why would he do that?
Didn't want to sow discord, didn't want to disgrace it.
Yes.
Be amongst the brethren, all kinds of things.
Yes. He absolutely was trying to avoid all that. He was not going to, and some people would seek enjoyment. Guess what Mary's doing? Mary's pregnant. I'm not married to her. I didn't get her pregnant. You know what that means, right? And he absolutely wanted to make sure that didn't happen. And as Lee said, was it true? Yeah, it was true. But spreading it around, that would still constitute gossip, and he wanted to make sure that never would happen. I think that's an awesome example.
We think of the devil, well, you mentioned the devil being the father of lies and being a murderer and all that. He was also the first gossiper. He gossiped to Eve about God, and what he said wasn't true. And he talked behind God's back and misrepresented God to Eve.
That's a great point. Yes. He's the father of gossip. Father of sin, isn't he? Okay. Okay, so we looked at Matthew 5, we looked at Hebrews 12. James 3. James has a lot to say about speech in general. But in James 3, in verse 13, who is wise and understanding among you, let him show by good conduct that his works are done in the meekness of wisdom. If you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast and lie against the truth. Why, if I know that Jim is secretly getting drunk at night, why would I pass that along to other people and not go talk to Jim? What would my motive be? I must get something out of it, right? I'll go over here to Ashley and say, did you know that Jim goes home and drinks a six-pack every night? Did you know that? Why would I say that? I want to see what her reaction's going to be. I get something out of that. If I'm doing that, James says, don't think that that's coming from heaven. That's not heavenly kind of wisdom. This is self-seeking. This is not what God wants from his people. He says this wisdom does not descend from above, but is earthly, sensual, demonic. For where envy and self-seeking exist, confusion and every evil thing are there. But the wisdom that's from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Again, just like the Ephesians passage, gossip violates this entire principle. We can't be disciples of Jesus and be spreading discord. We're to be peacemakers. Other thoughts about that? Okay. It's amazing to me how many passages, when you start talking about gossip and talebearing, friends come up. Because this becomes an occasion to separate friends. I mean, if me and Lee are tight, we're out here fishing all the time and we're buddies, my car breaks down, he comes and helps me and all of that. And he shares something with me because we're always together. Then he finds out that I've passed it along. I may have just done damage that I never can undo. I may have. Proverbs 16, 27 and 28. Proverbs 16, 27. An ungodly man digs up evil, and it is on his lips like a burning fire. A perverse man sows strife, and a whisperer separates the best of friends. Now, does that say something about how powerful gossip can be? The best of friends. Me and Gary have been friends for 40 years. And, you know, there's nothing we don't know about each other. And he tells me something that is supposed to be in confidence, and I spread it, and I may overnight wipe out 40 years worth of friendship. Separates the best of friends. It was interesting to me, this ungodly man, it's a man of Belial. If you go back through the Old Testament especially and look at some of the men of Belial, like who's the guy that you bring up occasionally, Dick, and he is Fool, his name is Fool? Yeah, how'd you like to bring him home to meet the folks? But, you know, you talk about a man of Belial. He's foolish, and this is an ungodly man. He digs up evil, and it's on his lips like a burning fire. What does that mean? It's on his lips like a burning fire. He can't wait to tell. I can't get it off. Now, Jeremiah had a burning fire in him to tell the word of the God. This guy's got a burning fire to spread gossip. He's an evil man. He's an ungodly man. He digs it up, and then he can't wait to tell it. If that describes me, and yet I've fooled myself into thinking I'm a disciple of Jesus, this violates everything Jesus stands for. You don't dig up evil. And when you find something, you don't spread it on and have this kind of spirit that you can't wait to tell it. Other thoughts about that? You guys are awful quiet tonight.
Well, and you never look at that person the same
That's right.
again. Years ago, when the Avon lady came around to your house, the one, we were living in Tuckerman then, but she came to my house and she said, did you know that, and she named this woman, said that so-and-so said that you're doing, it was talking about me, that you're doing so-and-so. And I said, well, I don't know where she got her information. And she said, well, that's what she's telling. Well, I went to that person that supposedly told that other person, you know, that told the Avon lady, that told me. And I told her, I said, what you're telling about me is not true.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I really don't appreciate, you know, you saying that.
Did she admit that she told it?
Yeah.
Okay.
She did. But I never looked at her the same.
Yeah,
You know, again.
that's right.
And she was married to one of my classmates, and so I see her, you know, often because we all get together.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can't see her now without thinking about that.
Was she remorseful? Did she?
No, no. She's just not that kind of person to
Yeah.
be remorseful.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew, you know, she didn't like me confronting her, of course.
Yeah.
But she did admit she said it.
Well, I just wondered because a lot of folks won't even admit it. You know, they'll just, I never said that.
She said, yes, I said it. But
Wow.
that was it.
Yeah. And again, even if it were true, if it were unflattering, it wouldn't be her job to be just telling it.
But I just thought it was, you know, that girl told this person, and that person told the Avon lady, and the Avon lady told me. And
Right.
I don't know who else she probably told, because, you know, that was just the way that would work.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Uh,
there's many things that can start out as truth as well, and by the time it's done, it's nowhere near that. If you've ever taken a business communication class or any kind of communication class in college, a lot of times they'll do this test type thing to where the teacher will come tell the person in the first row something, and they'll want it to go all the way around, and we did this in one of my classes. started out as like a near paragraph about something, and by the time it got all the way around the room, it ended up being like 2 words.
Yeah.
So-and-so did this. And it had no relevance to what the initial, when the teacher told what the original sentence was, it was as far from the truth and even on the subject.
Yeah.
About the time. So you could easily destroy a good person's reputation with something like that. It could be a guy that everybody's known in the community, you know, I think about, you know, elderships and, you know, things like that, being above reproach and just being a Christian in general.
That's right.
Somebody that you know in the community who's upstanding, and all it takes is one time for something to start out as a truth, completely innocent, and end up all over the place, and now all of a sudden this person that's so upstanding has committed some sort of, you know, harm against somebody or ill will of something like that, and now their reputation is destroyed.
That's right.
forever.
That's the fallout from gossip. When we were kids, we used to call that telephone, and we'd get all the kids around and pass a, and you're right. I mean, that's inherent in gossip. You lose, even if it starts out true, you lose truth and start adding other things. Gary Jones was telling me he had a story about Buck Owens. You guys remember Buck Owens? And somebody came to him and told him, you know, they're saying this about you. They're spreading around this about you. That's not true, is it? He said, no, it's not true, but did they spell my name right? And he just would not acknowledge, you know, that upset him or anything. And that was the end of it. They didn't say anything anymore. So that's another big part of it is, you know, am I going to play into it? Back to James here, James 3 and verse 6. The tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature and is set on fire by hell. Now, and that's Gehenna, by the way. This shows you the gravity of using our language. God has given us a great tool, and He's also given us a great responsibility about how we use it. And I don't know of any time in our history that this is more important than when we can take an entire story and just hit forward, send. You know, that's using my tongue too. It came from me, so it's my tongue, right? And this just shows you how grave this can be. Sets on fire the course of nature and is set on fire by hell. First of all, that the word fire is used shows you how ferocious this is. And the fact that the source of the fire can be from hell. And gossip brings that out. You know, it's ill will. It's trying to embarrass someone, show things that, you know, would put them in a bad light. And the damage that's caused by gossip is so harsh, as we just read, it can destroy the best of friendships. Proverbs 17 and in verse 9, he who covers a transgression seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates friends. As I said, you'd be surprised how many times the tongue is brought up in separating friends. Now, there's two takes on this. One is that when there's been something that's happened, you know, me and Chris get crossways, and I just decide, you know, to overlook it for the sake of our friendship. And so I cover it. In other words, you know, I cover it. It's not going to separate us. And the repeating part would be that I'm not going to bring it up to you again, okay? You know, you ever hear that song by Garth Brooks where he talked about he and his wife, when they get into a fight, they bury the hatchet, but they leave the handle sticking out. You know, that's not really burying the hatchet, is it? because you trip over it later. And a lot of, that ruins a lot of marriages, Dick.
The passage you're showing in James 3 about all these different animals have been tamed, and then
Yeah. But no man tames the tongue.
no man can tame the tongue. So what do we do when the animal can't be tamed? We keep it in a cage. God gave us a cage to keep the tongue in.
That is a great point. Yeah. You don't let a wild animal just get out and roam, and yet we let our tongues do that. But God gave us a cage. That is a great point. So keep that tongue under control. And the other take on this is, that it's between more people. Covering a transgression is not holding it against someone, and repeating it is, spreading it on. Not just repeating to that person, but repeating it elsewhere. And that will separate friends. Bringing it up when I said it was covered will separate us, and repeating it to others, that will separate us. I don't know which take you all have on that, but that was a couple different ways it's interpreted. Other thoughts about that? Okay, so separates friends. This is a big problem with gossip. And here's another thing.
If that person actually said that, I couldn't just let that go.
Yeah.
I have to go to them and say, did you say that?
Yeah. And that's what we should do. That's what we're called to do.
Oh, I thought you said.
It's and I don't know why so many times somebody does something to us and our knee-jerk reaction is, I'm going to go talk to somebody about what they did. That's not what God asked us to do. We're to go to them. Gossip can bring anger. I think that we've brought that out, but Proverbs 25 and verse 23 is a truth about this. The north wind brings forth rain, a backbiting tongue, an angry countenance. So, if we can, and Jesus used this in other places, if we can recognize the pattern of the weather, we ought to be able to recognize spiritual truths as well. And using the tongue in the wrong way can cause anger, and that becomes a real problem because God has definite feelings about anger. It's not part of being a disciple of Jesus. A backbiter, and I think you mentioned this last week, Dick, that a backbiter really refers to somebody who doesn't have the courage to say things to your face. That's why he's behind your back. And instead of meeting people face to face with open, honest discussion, people will spread rumors behind their back. That's the backbiting. And then when I find out, that somebody's been talking behind my back, how do I want to respond? Am I happy about it? No. So chances are I'm angry about it. If I found out that Taylor's going around, saying things about me that aren't true, I'm not happy about it, and there's a very real possibility that's going to stir up anger with me. So I need to understand that by my gossip, I can cause an outburst of anger. Proverbs 29 and verse 22 is another passage that talks about this. An angry man stirs up strife, and a furious man abounds in transgression. This is one of the things that I try to bring up with young folks. 1 Corinthians 15 verse 33 says that evil companions corrupt good morals. Well, if you hang around somebody that's angry, what is there a good chance will happen? Yeah, you'll be angry too. I mean, if this guy's just coming unglued at the smallest thing and always raising his voice, yeah, you're not going to hang around that all the time and it not have some impact on you. And a furious man abounds in transgression. Anger and fury is not a good arena for godly living. And so gossip is apt to stir up these feelings. The King James Version renders Proverbs 25 and verse 23, "The north wind drives away rain, and an angry countenance a backbiting tongue." And so you have kind of an opposite meaning there, but both of these tell a story either way. And, you know, if I'm going to remember this principle that where there's no wood, the fire goes out, then I'm going to stay away from this, anything that's going to stir up anger and cause that kind of harm. Other thoughts about that?
Well, I know some people will, I just lost my train of thought. They will start a rumor just to get even with that person because they are jealous of them.
Mm-hmm.
And like maybe they want their position.
Sure. And that's another danger of gossip. And one of the things we talked about is it doesn't make your light shine brighter by putting out the lights of others. You know, our lights shine brighter when we reflect the glory of God. So we don't have a brighter light by making everybody else's light dim. And I think that's one of the goals of gossip. Like you said, in that situation, you know, I'm going to spread this rumor so I can dim their light and then I look brighter.
Right.
And what's that going to do? That's certainly going to bring anger. Yes.
I think you could extend it to even telling things about people that are true, that might need to have your discretion and not be told. Because you could tell things about others that can hurt them still.
Absolutely. Said my doctor that's sworn by HIPAA. But I mean, yeah, even in your profession, I mean, there's a lot of things that you could tell about people that could have devastating consequences. What if a guy wanted to take a job that he had to be in a certain physical condition, and there's something, you know, that you know, they don't ask it on the form, but there's something you know, and you could devastate this guy. There's some things that you might want to talk to him about and not just go spreading the rumors everywhere. It doesn't matter that it's true. What is the intention? We talked a lot about that last time. What is my intention? What do I intend to do with this information? Do I need to? And what am I going to get from it? That's a great point. Other thoughts? Okay. This is the only picture I could find when I Googled fool, so you have to live with it. Gossip, the Bible tells us, shows us to be a fool because it is foolish behavior. As the author says, to be involved in any sin, especially a sin that's committed with our words, the Bible says it indicates that we are foolish. Proverbs 17, 27 and 28. The wise man says, "He who has knowledge spares his words, and a man of understanding is of a calm spirit. Even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace. When he shuts his lips, he is considered perceptive." Isn't that amazing? You know, I guess the guy thought he was probably pretty clever when he came up with this. Turns out it started in the Bible. But have you heard this saying that it's better to keep your mouth shut than to open it, and or better to keep your mouth shut and be thought a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubt, right? Well, here it is. You know, somebody clever didn't come up with that. God came up with that. And even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace, because that shows discipline, doesn't it? It shows self-discipline. I could say something, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. You remember in the progression of Job with his friends, the last guy, Elihu, right? The last guy says, you know what? I have sit here and listened to you guys until I've had it up to here, and you guys, none of you guys know what you're talking about. And he says, I've kept quiet as long as I can keep quiet, and now I'm going to talk. But at least he kept quiet, right? He kept quiet while these guys are reasoning, and that took some self-discipline. He kept his mouth closed. And when he did open it, boy, he had some things to say. But the fool is considered wise when he keeps his mouth closed. Have you ever been told something that maybe you would like to be the first one to tell it to other people, but it's not your job? Chelsea just straightened me out on this when the baby was born, you know. I started doing pictures, and then I was holding my phone. She says, nobody sends pictures until I do. And, you know, but I wanted to get it out there, you know. I had my finger on the button. But, And do we do that with our mouths sometimes? I know something. I want to be the first one to tell it. I know we do. Even the TV stations do it. They want to be the first one to get it out there, even when they don't have all the facts yet. They just want to be the first one to say it. And you and I do the same thing sometimes. We want to be the first one to say it. We don't have all the facts, but don't bother me with the facts. I just want to tell the story, right? Okay. Thoughts about that? Proverbs 10 and verse 19. Proverbs 10:19. In the multitude of words, sin is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is wise. So again, what does that fluo root word mean? To bubble forth. And the more that we think we have to talk, the more chance there is that we reveal things we're not supposed to, right? Just talking to be talking. And so when should I talk? When I have something to say. And when someone has told me something and I don't have permission, I need to close my mouth, exercise some discipline. And as I said, you know, it has been my experience as a preacher that I just assume everything's confidential. Because I've gotten in trouble early on too many times, and so, you know, everything's confidential now unless you say it's not. And, you know, I don't think that's just for preachers. I think that is, you know, how we all ought to view these things. We won't get in trouble telling things that we weren't supposed to tell. But in the multitude of words, sin is not lacking. Other thoughts about that? Okay, well, that is the end of the things wrong with gossip section. And next week, Lord willing, we're going to begin the how to overcome section. And the very first thing, as Dick pointed out, is it true? And it turns out that's not the only criteria, is it? It's a good place to start, but it's not where we want to stop. Anybody have some words of wisdom to close this out? Oh man, I was hoping somebody did.
Don't want from the Bible.
Do it.
Goes along with all these others. Proverbs 29:11. A fool uttereth all his mind, but a wise man keepeth it in till afterward. You had a similar one if you want to go.
Yes. Was that 29:11?
Yeah, did you have that on there?
I don't think I had that one, but I like that. A fool vents all his feelings, but a wise man holds them back. So, you know, not letting everything out. And it literally means vents all his spirit. So everything within, he tells it. And then the wise man, he holds it back. He closes his mouth. Okay, so we'll get into how to overcome this, which is very important next time. Thank you all.
Hello, everyone. It's time for us to begin. If you'd like to mark your songbooks for the invitation hymn, it'll be number 61. And before we have our lesson, we'll sing number 685. We'll just sing it one time. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Keep silence, keep silence, keep silence before him.
So you stand up. Chris, I was hoping you were going to come up here and do this. No such luck, right? Kyle asked me to fill in tonight. Sorry. But I know I'm going to be preaching to the choir, but the thing that has really hit me this week is how fortunate we are to be able to be here. Do you realize that? I mean, that we have the health and the ability and the opportunity and the desire to be here. I'm afraid I have taken that for granted. I've talked to some folks this week that they would just give anything to be able to be here and study, and they simply are unable. It is not a possibility for them. And I hope that if we have been, we stop taking for granted this blessed opportunity. In Acts chapter 20 and verse 7, I know most of desire to come together to do that. And so they do. And then in Hebrews chapter 10, and beginning in verse 23, the Hebrew writer says, "Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching." So now I know that the saints are going to be coming together. What's my attitude about coming together with them? Well, the Hebrew writer says, do what you started out to do. And when you come together, the effect that you have on your other brethren is you stir them up to love and good work. So, question, if that's what you do when you come together with them, what happens when you don't come together with them? You have the health and you have the ability and you have the opportunity, but you just don't have the desire. And therefore, your brethren are not stirred up to love and good works. These brethren desire to come together. In Acts chapter 12 and verse 5, Peter's in prison. He can't come together with the brethren. And guess where the brethren are? They're all gathered together and they're praying together. And guess what happens? While they're praying, Peter comes to the gate. The prison is opened up. His chains have fallen off. An angel leads him out. The gate opens. And while they're still praying, there he is. But they came together to pray. Peter wanted to. In 2 Corinthians 11, we read about the Apostle Paul and all the things that he went through. He spent a night and a day in the sea, in the water, waiting for rescue. He was stoned and left for dead in Acts chapter 14. In fact, many commentators think that he was dead and that this is another example of resurrection because they dragged him out of the city supposing him to be dead. When you're that close to someone that you're holding their body and you're dragging them out and you suppose them to be dead, they look pretty dead, don't they? And whether he was dead or he looked that way, God immediately picked him up. And where did he go? That place over there is who stoned him and drug him out of the city. So you're going to go this way, right? Nope. He turned around and went right back where his brethren were. He desired to be with them. There are people that are incarcerated and they can't come together. There are people who are sick and they're not able to get up and come together. There are folks who came together for years and years without fail, and now they are shut in because of their health debilitating, and they can't come together with us. There are people whose jobs prevent them sometimes from coming together. Those who are involved in emergency services who are taking care of people while they're not coming together, and they must be about that business. And there are extreme circumstances that sometimes keep us from coming together. Namely, a pandemic. And we all of a sudden, we were told, don't come together. How did you feel about that? Sunday morning, I can leave my pajamas on. Is that how you felt? Is that how these folks felt? These folks desired to come together. And we have folks that would be here if there was any way humanly possible. And they can't. Why would I ever give up an opportunity? I'll tell you what, go talk to some folks who are shut in. Go talk to somebody that's in jail or prison that wants to be at church. Go talk to somebody that's in the hospital, that's homesick. Ask them what they would give to be able to be out with their brethren. Why would we ever take that for granted? And yet we do. I have. And that's why I am giving this for your consideration. Have you taken for granted the very act of coming together? One of the greatest things that happened when God's people came together was the gospel was preached and people obeyed it. Have you done that? Have you confessed your faith in Jesus Christ, repented and been baptized for the remission of your sins? Everything is ready right now. If there's someone who believes in Jesus and is ready to confess that belief, you don't have to know the entire Old Testament. You don't have to know everything about the New Testament. But if you know Jesus is the Savior and you're ready to commit your life to Him, you're ready to be buried in baptism in His name. If you need to do that, we're ready to help you. Brother or sister, have you realized that there are things in your life that you've taken for granted or that you haven't taken as seriously as you could have? Can we encourage one another to make the group here at Stone Ridge rock solid in our desire to serve the Lord? If we can help you in any way, please let your needs be made known by coming to the front right now while we stand and sing. We're certainly thankful for the presence of everyone this evening, and look around and see who's not able to be out, and let's check on them and let them
231. 231.